One. Good evening, or I should say, good afternoon here in Canada. Good evening in Malta, and
First.
parents, alienated children, grandparents. Welcome to Let's Talk on parent alienation and family domestic violence. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Charlie Azzopardi from Malta, and also right now we have our guest host from the Andy Martens show, Andy Martens, and he's got a special announcement. Andy?
All right. Thanks, Mary. I'm thrilled to be on Let's Talk because Mary and I partner up with Let's Talk Real Talk. This is Let's Talk Live. And I just wanted to mention that I conversed by email with Edward Kruk. And if you don't know who Edward Kruk is, look him up because he's one of the big guns with parental alienation and from Vancouver, Canada, BC, Canada, and he's going to be on this program sometime in July or August. And as Mary and I are striving to be the best podcast for Real Talk, Let's Talk Real Talk on parental alienation in Canada. We have all the top people, and we are in Italy with Charlie. He's included in that group of people. So Edward Crook will be on this program. Mary and I have sorted out yet whether it's Let's Talk, Real Talk, or both, but we'll do that as the end of June gets closer. All
Right.
right, Mary, that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Andy. Yes, welcome, Charlie. Dr. Charlie, as a party, is a systemic family therapist. Since the mid 80s, he has worked with families in the addiction field. He pioneered in the setting of the San Bias Therapeutic Community Program, sparked the family therapy services at Sagqua and the family therapy services at Vincent Square Clinic in London. Wow.
Mhm.
He recently set up a family therapy service in collaboration with the local charity to meet the therapeutic needs of families and children, those in prison. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Dr. Charlie also did a study, and I was one of the parents that got to do it with Dominique, Daniela.
Daniela,
Yeah,
Daniela,
Daniela.
yeah.
So,
I am Daniela's research supervisor at the moment. So
yeah, so she's a very amazing student you got there, Dr. Charlie. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to let you talk. So you tell us more about your systemic family therapy that will help kids
yeah,
that are going through parent alienation. This is our biggest topic here in Canada and US, UK. We all need help.
yes, I think for me, parental alienation all started to be formal very few years ago. That's about 10 years ago. When I started mingling with clients who had a problem of children not wanting to see them. So I started researching a bit about the matter. I have been systemic family therapist since the mid 80s. I actually studied psychology first, and so I was interacting with people, as you rightly said, starting from addictions to eating disorders to all sorts of fields. But I always encountered children who don't want to see one parent. But I always thought about it in the traditional therapeutic sense. So it was with the work of some people in the United States that I started realizing that I can be dealing with parental alienation. My work, because I'm a systemic family therapist, slowly started to be a bit inadequate in dealing with parental alienation cases where PA is severe, for example. So I started learning what other people were doing in different countries to reconnect children with their parents. And obviously, I discovered that They are doing some different things than I was doing. So it was a learning process for me. I think now I moved into something different in the sense that I moved to training, and as an institute of family therapy, which I chair, I set up the first course, accredited course in the world, specifically addressing parental alienation as a qualification. And that is something very interesting. Today happens to be the first day, the publishing day, the birthday, the true birthday, because today was born APAP, which is the European Journal of Parental Alienation Practice. And that is another first following the course, in which this journal treats specifically through a peer review system articles about parental alienation. So it's the first journal specifically addressing parental alienation as a specialty. And that is something very good. My idea of parental alienation and the work I do develop more over on the idea of preventing it from occurring, because as a family therapist, I was seeing signs and symptoms of parental alienation way ahead before they actually occurred. I was seeing signs, and even through the student clinic we run and my private practice, I was seeing signs of parental alienation when the couple was relatively okay and not in the separation process. So I was in some way learning about identifying anticipatory factors that could lead eventually to parental alienation. And so even my writings and my articles have focused specifically on developing a risk assessment procedure for family therapists like myself, for frontliners, for teachers, for lawyers, for whoever is working with families and children, to identify the risk of parental alienation before it actually happens. This is a bit, in a way, tricky. Any risk assessment is tricky. Any risk and management systems is tricky, because then when you identify the risk factors, you work to prove yourself wrong, because you don't want that people end up having fully blown parental alienation, severe, moderate parental alienation. So this is my current position in relation to parental alienation, because I train students as well to enable themselves and empower themselves in not waiting for parental alienation to be already damaging a child, or already severely damaging a child or a parent or a family, but anticipate the evolution, the development of parental alienation, and work at proving yourself wrong, that there is no parental alienation. And this is really interesting. I find it really interesting. Before, when I was trying, and I did some specialist training in reunification programs and reunification work, what I was finding out was that I was dealing with crisis. So I was learning to manage crisis, which is very important for those cases who end up being parental alienation cases. So that is very good. But my idea was to learn to anticipate that and to identify signs and symptoms before. And this is the shift I've made over the last 10 years. I don't know if that explains.
Oh, absolutely. It does explain a lot, because I went through it before I had children, because I married an alienated adult child. At 18, he asked me to come to the court with him that day, graduation, excuse me, so he could change his name so his stepfather would stop beating him. And me being 18 years old, not even thinking, I said, no, like, I'm graduated and I'm going to the beach sort of deal. I'm not going to no court. So I said no. The whole time he stalked me until he got me. And then I found out that it was a stepfather that, went in the family when he was only 14. He had no father in between. His father was taken when he was 9 months old. So he never had a family. He joined my family. I have 7 brothers. He fit right in there. He was so tight because he needed that stability. So I know when these alienated children are seeking help is by connecting with a family, but not their own family because they've been alienated from them. So I saw how my ex-husband started when we got married. He wouldn't let his mom or the stepfather into our home now. He had control. He had control. And every time he said if I left him, he would kill himself. So I thought, you know what? We found his father at 25. We were on our way to see him. 2 months prior, he got murdered. So I brought up memories for him that he never had, and it really hurt him. And then we had children, and then the same tactics were used on our kids. And so every time I went to leave them, because it was, domestic violence plays a big part. I didn't want any more for my children to see it. They say if the children are growing up in it, they're going to be the same. And sure enough, it's proven. My alienated children after 18 years have become the abusers. So this is a really a generational curse because they're learning from the best. My kids' grandmother alienated their father. The father alienates the children. My children already wrote me, you will never see your grandchildren. That's what they grew up hearing.
Yeah, in a way, what you're saying reminds me of how attachment is involved in, the learning, the process of attachment as we grow from babies to children to toddlers to teens to whatever. How attachment plays an important role in the learning of the child attaching to a parent will obviously mark his way of attaching then to other people in his life, to other adults, especially in intimate relationships.
Yes.
And what's more intimate than a relationship with a wife and with a child? You see, so it's very interesting how attachment plays a very important role. So looking to attachment difficulties in children also gives us the idea that we can do something to help the child resolve those attachment issues so that the child will be out of risk of developing alienation eventually as an adult as well.
Absolutely, because after 18 years, my children were only teenagers. Before that time, they were loving, they were hugging me, kissing me. Now it's like they want to stab me and kill me, and only because that's their way of pulling away. And I saw how their father did it when the mother would come up to the doorstep to ring the doorbell, and he would take me into another room so I wouldn't answer the door. And it was like, what the heck did I just fall into? So I learned these stages. Now I help others. I can't even help myself, but I'm still not fighting, but praying that my children will come to realize that I was not what they say I was, and that they'll need me as a grandmother to raise those children with love, because they don't have love in them. How are they going to explain to their children what grandma, it's so hard to not be there. And my own children are missing out on their grandma for 18 years. She's going to be 91 years soon. And, that's the best part of life for the children, to be with a grandparent. And so grandparent alienation is devastating. I don't have grandchildren, but it hurts me to hear I will never see them when they do come.
Sure.
And they're in their 30s. So this is what we need to let the judges know in family court, that they cannot separate the parents from the child because they're damaging the children.
The law in Canada needs some working on, of course.
We need you.
I think it's the law everywhere that needs some working on, and some radical shifts, and also some refinements as well, some laws, because obviously the law is about it's about evidence, isn't it? and court cases are about evidence. And evidence in parental alienation can be very tricky
Yes.
because evidence in parental alienation can be exactly paradoxical, exactly the opposite of what's going on. So people present themselves exactly the opposite of what they are and what they're doing, and I think
Projection.
this counterintuitive nature, which Gardner talked about and everyone else talked about, even Amy Baker talked about, and many, many others, the counterintuitive nature of the presentation of the case often defies even the sharpest professionals. That's why in reconnection work, there need to be some specialist training because obviously the professional has to go beyond what they see in front of them. Because what you see in front of you is typically an alienator who is well composed and an alienated parent who is ill composed because obviously he's going through or she's going through lots of pain and lots of suffering. So they are angry and they are unstable and they are hurt. And obviously the alienator is calm and well presented, well groomed, and calm because obviously they know that if they compose themselves in this way and they present themselves in this way, no one is going to believe the other man or the other woman who is saying she's abusing me or she's abusing my child. So this is very interesting how courts need to learn a lot about parental alienation for them to be able to understand the dynamics of what goes on and eventually on the presentation of what they see in front of them. The other big, in some way, big error in courts is that often people are not allowed to speak in court. It's the lawyers who are allowed to speak in court. So
Yes.
the judge or the magistrate, whoever is handling the case, is not in a position to hear the voices of the people. And that is a very, very missing, important, missing information for the judge to make a good judgment. But unfortunately, legal systems are all about legal jargon and legal words, which many people don't even understand. And so people are just shutting up in front of the judge and cannot say anything because they're not even understanding what they say.
That's
You know,
right.
so I think that's the fundamental change that needs to be done in all the legal systems because all legal systems are based on legal language, which makes sense only to lawyers and not to people in the street. And that's difficult.
Yeah. Families, our moms and dads, grandparents are all being silenced in family court. And that's their tactic, right? Because the lawyers do not feel what we feel. We are living a prolonged grief disorder. It's like living a living death where we
Yeah.
don't get to see our children. And who takes a tiny baby out of a mother's arm? Or, it's the worst feeling for a mother. I mean, I know fathers. I have 7 brothers. God bless them all. But it's easier for a father to get up in the morning and go to work. Now he has to deal with all these things that a mom would do naturally. He can't breastfeed the child, but yet these judges don't care. They're taking these newborn babies and giving them to someone who has no clue. But there are good fathers out there. So that's why not equal shared parenting, equal parenting is important because the child does need the male figure and the female figure. And, girls are being raised without moms, boys are being raised without dads. Their gender is being split as well.
Mm.
If I see that they're not playing the part that they're supposed to play.
Well, what we know is that children who grow up without a mother typically are damaged in one way. And children who grow up without a father are damaged in another way. And boys and girls are damaged differently as well. But I just give you this example that, for example, in the United States, and I think it's very similar in the UK. 90% of prison population is fatherless.
Mm,
And maybe this is very cultural as well, because the father represents some kind of discipline, some kind of guidance, some kind of authority in the traditional family system, not in the contemporary family system, of course, because it's different now. But in the traditional sense of family, the father represented some kind of discipline, some kind of authority. And this is very, very dangerous. When you know that 90% of the male prison population in the United States and in the UK is fatherless, then you start to see things from a different perspective. And it's the same for women in prison. The female population in prison also seem to have issues with daddy in some way. But this is obviously, there's been no detailed research on these themes, because these are things that are emerging as a statistical data rather than understanding the meaning of these phenomena. But these are very interesting phenomena because they can illuminate us on how we have to restructure family life so that people get along well together, and do their utmost to put the children as in to work in the best interest of the children rather than in their personal best interest. Because when people have children, then I think they have to, in some way, adapt to the new situation. If I think if you were able to make a child, then you have to be able to 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 do your best to bring this child up in the best possible sense for the child, not for yourself, for the child. It reminds me of Khalil Gibran, who, in one of his poems, he writes about the child, and he says that children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. So it's really interesting how different perspectives about childhood then lead different parents to bring up their children in different ways. And this is very cultural, Mary. This is very
yes.
cultural. I'm sure even in Canada, you have different ethnic groups with different cultures rearing children in different ways. And I'm not sure, because I don't want to be incorrect when I say this, but I'm not sure whether parental alienation happens more in particular cultures than in others.
There really is no evidence. Yeah, we really have no evidence who is the worst.
Research that. We need to
Yeah,
research.
yeah. You're breaking up, Dr. Charlie.
Oh,
So
sorry.
it's okay. I'm gonna get Andy to weigh in here. He's awfully quiet up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just listening. Great stuff. We are live here on this Let's Talk. It's 1:37 in Canada and 7:37 in Italy.
In Malta,
But
Malta.
in
Malta,
Malta, yeah,
Malta.
Malta is kind of part of Italy, but it's a sort of separate kind of thing, isn't it?
It's a separate country.
Yeah,
It's Republic of Malta. It's a small island in the center of the Mediterranean, just
that's
beneath.
right, close to Italy. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting, Charlie, because relation. Oh, first, let me say I received a couple of texts that I've made this clear before. The content on this show and Real Talk, and any show of the Andy Martin Show is Mary and I decide on that. Bottom line. So if you're not happy with what the content, you need to come and talk to us, not complain. Anyway, that said, relationships are, whether Mary and I have been doing these shows for quite a while now, whether you're married or doing these shows, the reality is this, Charlie, you mentioned that you can tell right before the parental alienation happens. How important is, I think you can, that's exactly right, control and somebody not being empathetic are two key criteria that if you see this, there's red flags. How have you seen this? Am I right about that? And have you gauged those two things as factors of identifying parental alienation before it happens?
Yeah. So just imagine a couple who has a child and who both are involved in different activities. They work, they have a job. And obviously, every couple, every family has its tensions. Yeah. So just think about this family living in your country, in your town, and with your cultural beliefs about childhood, cultural beliefs about relationships, cultural beliefs about families, cultural beliefs about money and money making, and so on and so forth. So this family starts developing their family patterns, their relational patterns in the family based on who they are and what they know and where they are living. So many of the practices I am going to point out, family practices, are therefore cultural. So let's say one baby or one little child wakes up sick in the morning, and then after a month again wakes up sick in the morning, and then after a month wakes up sick in the morning. And each time the child is sick, one it's the same parent that decides to stay with him or her, and the other goes to work. Mary was talking about the man going to work, and it's easy for them in some way. So maybe in this case, the child is learning that mommy is caring and daddy is uncaring because he's going to work. And often this can be reinforced in many subtle ways, again, cultural, when the husband and wife have a fight, and the wife says to the husband, you don't care, you prefer work than family, you prefer work than me, and you. So the child is being reinforced with the idea. And there are times when the couple fight, for example, and when the couple fight, sometimes the couple may decide to sleep in a different bed. And often the child decides to replace one of the parents. And often it's the parent, the preferred parent. So if that is repeated over and over again, that is also giving the child the impression that he can care for the other parent as much as the other parent cares for the parent. Yeah.
Yes.
So these are all little signs and symptoms that we can learn to anticipate and see and observe. Very few examples I brought, but there are many other and mostly cultural ideas about how to rear children that can help us understand that this family, if it happens that they end up in separation, there will definitely be parental alienation, because the child, when made to choose between parents, there is going to be a force from one parent against the other parent. And the child is going to feel, especially with the court systems as they are in Malta, the court system involves the child, depending on the age, but 10 years, 12 years, they invite the child to court to say who they want to stay with. And that is the most horrible thing. You can put a child in that position, because the child becomes loyalty bound, and choose safest, whatever he perceives as the safest choice for him, which may not be the safest, but that's perception is different from reality, and the child perceives different things. So there are many practices, going out with the same parent over and over again and not balancing out with the other parent. Only one parent plays with the child all the time without, it's really something very cultural, especially in traditional families where gender roles and gender role stereotypes were very fixed. The father goes to work, the mommy cares emotionally, the father cares structurally, he brings money. Even though the mommy works just the same now, some parents still feel that they need to offer care for the children. because the other parent doesn't. And this leads to polarization. And it's very common. It's almost in every couple where parents polarize. That is, one becomes too cruel and one becomes too or strict and one becomes too lenient. Because the way it develops is that the parents tell you, if I am not lenient with this child, nobody's going to be. He's too strong with him. He's too punitive. He's too disciplined, or she's too disciplined. So I have to be lenient. And the other one justifies his lenience, his punitive attitude by saying, if I don't discipline this child, nobody's going to discipline this child. So parents polarize. And this is another sign when parents are polarizing on the way they express love, discipline, whatever is related to childhood. These are few examples, Andy, that I can bring here, considering time as well and all sorts of constraints.
Yes, we've reached the 30 minutes. So how about we another 5 minutes before we end this with you? But yeah, I did see that in my own relationship where the father was whatever, where I had to discipline the kids. And then when the kids ran to dad and said, Mom says this, well, don't listen to her. So this is part of alienation, right? Oh, mom's wrong. Mom always thinks she's right, or dad always thinks he's right. This is what parents need to stop doing, because that's a creation of alienation, because the child will now fear the tougher parent, the stricter parent, and the more abusive parent, and end up with them, because that's the attachment that they get instead of being with the loving parent. Because the loving parent, well, they always know they could run back to the loving parent. Eventually, that parent will always forgive them, whereas the lenient, stronger, abusive parent won't give a crap.
Sure.
So these kids need to do conditional love versus unconditional love, and they have to go to the conditional because they get rewarded for it. And that's the wrong part of what parents do
I
too.
think we can mitigate this by educating parents, educating new couples as well, how to rear children and how to do co-parenting together, collaborate together in the best interest of the child, not in their best interest, but in the best interest of the child, and therefore in the best interest of the family, because that's very important.
It's always about the children. It's what the child needs. So what? We take the children to the doctor or the dentist and we spend an extra $10-20 on their teeth. Why would the other parents say, no, you're just wasting money? Or you put your children into music lessons. Oh, you're wasting your money. You're wasting my money. So the children don't flourish because they think they're a total loser. They're wasting dad's or mom's money. We need to be on the same page when we praise our children, when we punish, not punish, but correct their behavior. We need to be on the same page.
Yeah, definitely so. And I think it can be mitigated only by educating parents. As the child is born, during pregnancy visits to the hospital, there should be someone who is helping them understand what they're in for, really.
Right.
Nobody prepares you. Even when you buy a stupid washing machine, you're given a handbook and someone shows you how to do it.
That's it.
But if you have a baby, that's not important.
No, because it's supposed to be natural, right? We're all supposed to know what the things are. But you're right. Before we even get pregnant, like when we get married, there should be a parenting plan, a parenting class, marriage together. Like I know I had to go to church every Sunday for 9 months before we got married, but we just learned about God. It didn't help us to learn about each other.
Absolutely.
Right? Because
that be a problem with religious programs, but there can be also non-religious programs based on research, based on information about couplehood and familyhood and relationships that can help people learn to set a nice ground, a stable ground in their relationship, and develop patterns that are functional and not dysfunctional in the relationship that can lead them to continue loving each other and cherishing the family and cherishing family life for many long years.
Right, right. So, Andy, one last thing before
Yes,
Charlie
I
leaves.
have. Yeah, I just wanted to get Charlie's opinion on is there a difference between counseling and therapy as such when people look for counseling or therapy, which is better? Are they the same or are they different?
Okay. So if you're talking about counseling and therapy in the normal circumstances of life, when people feel depressed or people feel they're not functioning well in their life, or people feel mentally tired or anxious or whatever, there is some little difference between counseling and psychotherapy. But if you are talking about therapy for parental alienation, especially the moderate and the severe casework of parental alienation, that is a completely different stock, because that kind of therapy is confrontative in a completely different way than therapy for depression is. So there is a big difference. And when you speak about the reconnecting programs that you have in Canada as well, and there are in the United States, there are in the UK, in Australia, because those are based on an important notion of having to push someone to admit something, which is completely different than in psychotherapy, the traditional sense of psychotherapy, because you don't push anyone to understand that they have a depression. People feel that beforehand. Whereas the reconciliatory therapy that we do in parental alienation, people come with the understanding that they have nothing wrong with themselves. It's the other who's wrong.
Yes, yes. You froze there, Dr.
Oh,
Charlie,
Charlie's frozen. Oh,
but
no.
that's a great picture of
Yeah,
Dr.
that's right.
Charlie
This
there.
is a
But
freeze frame. Oh, there he is.
there he is. You froze on us.
It's the counterintuitive nature of PA that makes the difference in the therapeutic application of therapy between parental alienation cases and non-parental alienation cases. There's a big difference, and it is well explained in the literature. Whichever literature you read, it's very well explained.
Right. Well, Dr. Charlie, thank you so much. I just want ask you, what would you recommend for parents right now that are dealing with a fresh divorce and dragging their children into family court? What do you
Yeah,
say to that?
I think parents have to be in touch with themselves and have to ask this important questions. Is what I am doing damaging my child or helping my child be better? Is what I'm doing in the best interest of the child? Or is it somehow in my best interest because I have this sense of vindication or this anger that I have towards the other partner? So keeping the child in the center of your choices and decisions is very important. And keeping the child and their best interest in the center of divorce cases or separation cases is very important. It's very easy to get carried away with your personal anger towards your partner, towards your husband, towards your wife. And in these cases, one has to stop and think and ask themselves, is what I'm doing in the best interest of the child? And seek help. If they are in doubt that what they're doing is in the child's best interest, they go and seek psychotherapy, counseling, whatever they think is best for them at that point.
Very wise words, Dr. Charlie. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's great. It's a great topic, and you're right. Again, if you're not empathetic, then it presents a problem, and you can't really reverse empathy if you're not empathetic. I see that in my own sister. She hasn't bothered to come and visit me or do anything with my children in 33 years of being in Sault Ste. Marie. Well, you can't teach that. If a person doesn't care about somebody else, that's a narcissist. They don't care if you're dead or alive, even if you're with family. So this is what you have with personality disorder and narcissism, and it's sad. But and then she says to me, "Well, why didn't I wasn't I invited to my daughter's wedding in September?" Well, you haven't done anything to keep the family to care about family over the last 30 years. You know, it's my daughter's decision who she invites to her wedding, not mine. You see, this is what a narcissist does. They flip it and say it's your fault. I'm not being invited to the wedding.
That's
Yeah. So
right.
we may also have another conversation in the future about how personality disorder is implicated in parental alienation as
Well,
well.
that would be great to have you back, Dr. Charlie, because we need all the information, all the education, all the help and support. Parents
Good.
are committing suicides, children are committing suicide, murder suicides. It's horrible. It's horrible. My own
In the first issue of the journal I told you about, the European Journal for Parental Alienation Practice, there is an article about suicide and parental alienation because it's increasingly common. I
yes.
believe you. I thank you so much for inviting me, Mary. I thank you so much for listening to me, Andy, and allow me to participate in your program. And I look forward for another meeting.
Well,
Thank you
we'll
so
have
much.
you on Real Talk, and you are included in our extraordinary line of experts that we're going to be having this year on both shows.
Yes, it's Sunday nights though, 8 o'clock. So that would be
Oh, that might make it a little late for you,
4
past your
a.m.
bedtime, Charlie. No,
No,
six,
good
two,
morning.
2 in the morning.
We'll wake you up. We'll call you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Charlie. Parents,
And
alienated grandparents, children worldwide, never give up. Keep the faith, stay strong, love your children, detach with love. It might get us further. Dr. Charlie, thank you. Everyone, good night.